Many of those who are skeptical of the Bible's claims, and even the existence of God, often express their desire to see scientific evidence. Since most of what is accepted as science is often validated by mathematics, we will provide a mathematical approach to proving that the Jesus of the Bible was and is God, very God, came down in human form to save humanity, performed miracles, died for the sins of all people, and was resurrected 3 days later, ultimately ascending into heaven. Impossible, you say? Well, let mathematics decide. There are over 300 prophecies in the Old Testament related to the anticipated Messiah. Among them are prophecies that one must take on faith in order to be considered as fulfilled. For instance, the prophecy that the Messiah would be born of a virgin. Although the Bible states that Jesus was indeed born of a virgin, there is no objective way we can verify that to a skeptic, so we won't be looking at that prophecy or ones like it. Instead, we will look at just 10 prophecies of a sort that can be verified by history itself. For instance, the Messiah's place of birth, family line, and the circumstances around his death. With that in mind, let's start with his ancestry. The Old Testament says that the Messiah would be from the line of Judah and be a descendant of both King David and Zerubbabel. How many people in the world would you say have that lineage? Would you agree that no more than 1 in 1,000 can trace their ancestry in just such a way? Just being in the line of Judah carries with it a probability of less than 1 in 1,000, so certainly the likelihood of one person being part of this specific family line is more rare. However, we will say 1 in 1,000 just to be safe. The Messiah is also prophesied to have been born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem currently has a population of about 25,000, but for most of its history, it has been about 1,000. Let's say that the chance of a person being born in Bethlehem is 1 in 100,000, although it is probably far less than that. The Messiah was to be preceded by a forerunner. If we were to say that the chances of someone claiming to be Messiah, who had been preceded by someone claiming to be his forerunner, is 1 in a million, I think we're being conservative. The Messiah was to present himself as king to Israel riding on a donkey. Most people that proclaim themselves king don't normally do so riding on a donkey. Likely no more than 100 people have ever presented themselves to Israel as king, so would you say that less than 1 in a million doing so on a donkey is fair? The Messiah was to visit the Second Temple. The Second Temple in Jerusalem only existed for about 580 years, and any person visiting during that window would have been limited to the general population of Jews of that region between 516 BC and 70 AD. Would you agree that this has a likelihood of no more than, say, 1 in 10,000? The Messiah was to be betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver that would then be cast into the temple and eventually given to a potter. Okay, certainly thousands of people have been betrayed by friends, but by specifying the price and the ultimate use of that price, the chance of any one person at random fulfilling this prophecy has been reduced to 1 in a million at least. The Messiah would face false accusers at a mock trial, yet would not speak one word in defense of himself. Even those who are guilty usually put up a defense. So the likelihood of a person facing false charges and yet saying nothing is very low. Let's say 1 in 100,000. The Messiah would be scourged and beaten in such a savage way that his face would be marred more than any other person. Sadly, many people in history have been beaten to an almost unrecognizable degree, but scourging is usually not part of that torture. Let's say 1 person in 10,000 has ever received this sort of treatment. The Messiah's hands and feet would be pierced. Given all the ways that this could happen to a person, including crucifixion, let's say 1 in 100, and we're probably safe. The Messiah would be crucified with the wicked, yet buried in a rich man's grave. Between the ancient Persians, Carthaginians, Macedonians, and Romans, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people have been crucified. But once again, the Bible narrows the field by adding details such as being alongside the wicked during death, yet being buried as one with status and privilege. It's tough to guess, but let's conservatively say that only one person in 1,000 could have fulfilled this one. In order to calculate the odds of one person in history fulfilling all 10 of these prophecies, we need to do a bit of math. This might be easiest if we look at each probability as a power of 10. 100 becomes 10 to the power of 2. 1,000 becomes 10 to the power of 3, and so on. Then, by simply adding the exponents of the probabilities of each of these prophecies, we get a final calculation. Given the assumptions we made, the chances that one person in history could fulfill all 10 of these historically verified prophecies is on the order of 1 in 10 to the 44th power. That is one chance in 1 with 44 zeros behind it. To put that number in perspective, it is about the same as the odds of you getting struck by lightning twice, winning an Olympic medal, becoming an astronaut, injuring yourself with a firecracker, getting canonized, being killed by a shark, then giving birth to twins as a man. And we've only looked at 10 of the Old Testament prophecies. There are over 300, of which some are very specific and unusual, which of course would make their probability factor quite low. But if we were to consider another 10 prophecies with the same rarity as our first 10, we'd then be considering a probability of less than 1 in 10 to the 88th power. Scientists say that there are only 10 to the power of 66 atoms in the entire universe. So the likelihood of one person fulfilling even 20 of the ancient prophetic requirements of the Messiah at random is far, far lower than you being able to pick out a specially marked atom placed anywhere in the universe at random. Mathematicians say that any probability lower than 1 in 10 to the 55th power enters the realm of statistical impossibility. So by that definition alone, one can conclude that it's impossible that Jesus is not the prophesied Messiah. By fulfilling hundreds of prophecies about himself as recorded in the Bible over thousands of years, he proves himself to be Messiah. We must then give validity to everything else that he did, said, or was said about him. He claimed to be God, was said to have raised the dead to life, given sight to the blind, delivered the demon-possessed, and walked on water. He then allowed himself to go through the humiliation of being abandoned by all his friends, put through an illegal trial, convicted on false charges, tortured, and suffered the most horrible kind of public execution possible. He then rose from the dead 3 days later, and in doing so, provided a way for you to be reconciled to God. Christ willingly took the punishment of the cross so that you would not have to pay for your sins yourself. If you agree that these statements are true, then the only logical response is to give your life to Christ. Allow him to change you from the inside and start on a new path so you can enjoy all he wants to give you.